Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam, and in this video I'm going to be taking out these Compacta Hollies right here and replacing them with 3 Snow on the Mountain Camellias. These are white flowering, fall blooming camellias. They don't have a lot of buds on them because the plants are a little small, but they're going to take the place of these Compactas here. These are going to be out here on the edge of my white garden, which I'm doing in this area. I talked about it in another video. These large growing shrubs like this, we'll call them the bones. I'm going to be putting all those in this winter, but I definitely wanted to get these Compacta Hollies out. I had put these in. They were leftover pieces from a landscape job years ago, and I stuck them here, and they haven't done particularly well because it's a little shady. The camellias like the part shade conditions. These hollies will tolerate it, but they would prefer more sun than they're getting right here. So all I'm going to do with these is use my gas head shears, put my goggles on, cut them back as far as the head shears will cut them, and then I am just eliminating them as quick as possible. And then these 3 camellias will get laid out in here and go in the ground. Thing we need to know about camellias, azaleas, rhododendrons, all very similar. We need to leave them elevated a little bit if we're in an area that gets pretty regular rainfall because they don't like wet feet. And so a little insurance against them having wet feet is to mound them up a little bit. I'll show you that when I get those in the ground. This is definitely clay soils over here. I've mulched it for years, so it's definitely improved over what it was when I first moved in here. I've kept the ground covered. That stuff's broken down. Definitely have an inch, maybe 2 inches of topsoil I've built up over here. And after I get them planted, I'm actually just going to use the leaves and old pine straw that's here to go around them for now, because I'm going to be remulching this entire piece over here, and so I don't want to just piecemeal it. I'm going to just use the old stuff that I have right now, and then in a month or so I'm going to be at a point where I can just do this entire space at one time. This is a very bright, typical October day in North Carolina with the Carolina blue sky above me, but it's very hard to shoot video in this because the sun is just really kind of crazy this time of year. Wow, that one did not want to come out. That second Compacta definitely wanted to fight me. That was actually only about 15 minutes of real time. I'll end up cutting it way down. I don't know how it'll look to you, but that was about 15 minutes to cut those back and snatch them out of the ground. That one right there was real work. I usually just work one side. If I can get a little over 50% of the surface roots cut on one side, I'll then just start sliding it under, pulling back a little bit, not enough to break my shovel, but a little bit, and I'll hear those roots ripping. That's a very satisfying sound when you're taking a plant out of the ground, because every time you do that, you're a little bit closer when you hear them root. So I just keep going back. On the back side of that plant, I just kept going back and forth, a little further under with the shovel each time. Each time I pulled back, few more roots broke, and eventually I was able just to peel it out of the ground. This one was much smaller. It's been stunted by this tree. It came out very, very easily, but that's how I did that. I've got some too many roots back here where that small one was, so I've got to move this way a little bit with this first camellia. So I'm going to put one right about here, and then one here, and one right behind where that one was. They'll be pretty close together. I want them to grow in one kind of mass here around this corner, and they'll be full of white flowers every fall. This soil over here is actually very good now that I have uncovered. I think what's happened is all my leaves and everything have collected over the time I've been here, and this has really been very deep in mulch and leaves over time, and it's really improved the soil. You got to go down pretty far before I start to see the clay here, which is nice. But anyway, I'm going to get these holes prepped and ready. I did lay them out here first to kind of figure out exactly where I want to put them. And I'm putting them close enough together, like I said, that they're just going to end up being one large white flowering evergreen shrub. There's a lot of roots here from a lot of different directions. I've got this cherry tree here, this oak here, and this winter honeysuckle, plus the leftover roots from these hollies. So these holes have a lot of roots in them. So I am careful about getting rid of those and not mixing those back into the ground. They will steal nitrogen from your plants next year if you don't do a good job getting them all out. I can measure with my shovel where the center of these holes are and make sure that this next one also ends up in a similar spot. Here's my pine bark soil conditioner. I'm just going to pour this on the soil that I pulled out of the holes, and it'll get mixed in as I plant them. You can use some compost as well. If you're in some very sandy soils, you could use peat moss. Camellias are acid-loving plants. They certainly would thrive in any kind of lower pH setting. If you have alkaline soils, you really do need to add some sulfur. Fertilize them with holly tone would be a good choice to help lower the pH over time. And also mixing some peat moss, compost, pine bark, anything in to it that has a lower pH already will assist in that. But they like a pH probably somewhere down around 5.5, 5 to 5.5, maybe a little higher than that, but not much. That's kind of the ideal place for camellias. Same thing with azaleas and rhododendrons. They kind of fall into the same group, and you'll see fertilizers that say azalea, camellia, rhododendron fertilizers. Those fertilizers are for acid-loving plants. And that group also includes hollies. It includes blueberries. Blueberries like it even more acidic, but it would also include blueberries in that group. So the other thing I know about camellias is if they're this small in a 3-gallon pot, they're not rooted into the pot very well. These have not been in here very long. It takes a long time for camellias to root in a container. It takes a long time to root them when you're propagating them. It takes a long time to root them into any container. They're just not aggressive rooting plants in general. So I know when I pull this out, I'm going to gain some extra soil as well, because it's not going to hold together when I take it out. And ultimately I want them raised up about 2 inches high. Plants that I know aren't rooted into the container, I'm going to get them out very close to where they're going, flip it upside down, try to hold it together as much as I can. But this thing, it has roots out to the edge, but just barely, not enough really to hold it together. And I'm setting it in there, like I say, right where it's going to be raised above the ground. My soil and bark mix here, I'll just slowly pull that around it in a circle. And I'll stomp down on it as I go. I want to see the top of the root ball for sure. That'll end up in the leaves and in the mulch covering that up. Same thing here, just get it real close. Pull this pot off up over it and set her down in there. And it just almost exploded when it hit the ground. Almost all the soil came off of it. It's just not a problem as long as I get them covered up quick. So hopefully you can see this, how much I've got these raised up. This area stays wet. It's been extremely dry here this fall, and this area is still very moist over here. So I have them up about 2 inches like this. I didn't cover anything that wasn't covered. You can still see where that plant goes down into the soil. This one over here, you may be able to see even a little bit better. It's so sunny this morning, but you can see the black of that soil right there, and it's just got a cone up on the side of it. If you had sandier soils, you could definitely dig them in flatter, or you had an area that you thought would be drier, or it was going on a berm, something like that. But camellias will grow absolutely fantastic in this space. This is getting blasted with morning sun, and then they'll be in the shade by around noon. But all I'm gonna do is pull some of these leaves and things back around them. I'm gonna water them in really, really well. And then I'm gonna let them dry out between waterings. Camellias are definitely not water hogs at all. So thank you very much for watching this video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos.